breaking news just over the last several minutes. Loud explosions heard over Kyiv. We're hearing from Ukrainian officials that it might be Ukrainian air defense hitting incoming Russian missiles. You can see the streaks in the sky there, successful attempts to stop incoming Russian bombardment. Now, we've also seen evidence of these Russian strikes where they have hit. This is in a suburb of Kyiv. This was at a residential apartment complex in a nearby city. At least one person was killed there. Several more were injured. Now, one person with unique insight into all of this is Marie Yovanovitch. She was removed from her post as U.S. ambassador to Ukraine after a smear campaign led by allies of former President Trump. This morning, she is out with a new book that's prescient on many levels. Obviously, written before the Russian invasion, Yovanovitch warned, quote, "We have failed to call out Russia's behavior in a way that Russia finds persuasive or taken steps to stop it that Moscow finds compelling. If we continue to fumble around, we will someday, maybe soon, find ourselves in a serious confrontation in a context not of our choosing and not to our advantage." Joining me now is the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and author of the new book, Lessons from the Edge, Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch. Ambassador, thank you so much for being with us this morning. As I said, what you wrote in so many ways was prescient. How is what we're seeing on the ground today in Ukraine the consequence of what you write?
I think it's the culmination of what we've seen coming from the Putin regime over the last 20 years. 2008, the invasion of Georgia, then we had Ukraine in 2014, and now Ukraine again in 2022. And I think Putin will continue to expand the Russian Empire, the former Soviet Empire as he sees it, unless he is stopped.
You write that Putin needs to be met with a closed fist, and too often over the last decades, he's been met with an open hand. Is what's happening now, is the world resistance to this meeting him with a closed fist?
I think that the Biden administration, the international community has done a lot. The response has been good, but I think we need to do more. I think we need to be creative about how we can provide greater assistance, greater support to Ukraine. Nobody wants to push Putin over the edge. But on the other hand, I think that the question I have is how long can we stand by while Ukraine is being destroyed, thousands of people are losing their lives, and we do have the means to stop it, or at least to help the Ukrainians stop it. We can't let Vladimir Putin decide or set the conditions for this war.
Well, what means are you talking about specifically?
I think I would leave, the details to sort of military planners and military commanders, but I think that there are a lot more defense systems that we could be providing to the Ukrainian people.
You talk about Vladimir Putin not wanting to push him over the edge. There was this missile strike on this base just 11 miles from the Polish border. People can get a sense of just how close it is. This is the Polish border, the border with NATO, with a NATO nation there. To what extent do you think that Putin has an edge? Is he already over the edge? Does he care so much about that border just 11 miles away from the site of that strike?
That is a really good question. I think, as you know yourself, that base was a joint base with the U.S., the U.K., and Ukraine. So I think he's sending a message when he's attacking that base. It's also about the supply lines going into Ukraine. But I think that it's the big question. What are Putin's limits? And we see him continuing to escalate. And I think we need to remember that it is Russia that is the aggressor. It is Putin that is driving this. And we can't, again, let him set the parameters of this war.
Yeah, the whole world is seeing this right now. One of the things that's happening is that Russian forces continue to try to encircle Kyiv. They're pushing in there, and we have seen evidence of the Ukrainians fighting back, destroying this pontoon bridge that the Russians tried to place over a river to get to the central part of the city. You obviously lived in Kyiv for some time. How important is this city to the soul frankly, of Ukraine. What kind of a loss would it be if Putin were ever be able to take it?
Well, obviously, Kyiv is the capital and it is the heart of the country, but I think that what you're seeing is that the Ukrainian people, their spirit, that is the center of gravity. That is their strength. And I think that they will prevail. I don't see a scenario, even if Russia is able to dominate militarily, and there are some questions about that, I don't see a scenario where in the end, Moscow can win, because the Ukrainian people will continue to fight back. What we've been seeing over the last 3 weeks is what is going to continue.
Vladimir Zelensky, obviously the president of Ukraine, you had a complicated beginning with him. You met him several times as he was campaigning there. He was supposed to speak to a European gathering this morning. We now understand the prime minister is speaking, not the president. Not quite sure why that is, but how important is he personally right now to the defense of Ukraine?
I think he is absolutely vital. He is not only inspiring his own people and coalescing a nation, but he's inspiring the world. And I think through his superb communication skills, he is letting us know what is at stake. That this is a fight for Ukraine, but it is also considerably broader. It obviously threatens Europe and more broadly the international order.
David Sanger had a piece overnight in the New York Times talking about possible end games here where the Ukrainians might be able or willing to negotiate and what Russia might want out of it. One possibility, David suggests, is basically ceding some type of control to Russia of an entire swath of Ukraine that would include Crimea, which Russia says is annexed already, but also the south all the way to the Donbas region. Do you think the Ukrainians would ever accept anything like that?
You know, I'm not in Ukraine now, so I don't know where they stand. But I think that would be difficult, certainly for the Ukrainian people to accept.
Now, a lot of people in the United States who might not follow the diplomatic corps closely got to know you, obviously, during President Trump's first impeachment trial and know your plight, really, where you were pushed out by this smear campaign from allies of President Trump. To what extent do you think that affected Vladimir Putin, or how did that episode in some way influence, or did it, what we're seeing now?
Well, I think it emboldened Putin, because he could see that in the mind of the former president, Ukraine was just a pawn, and he was willing to use it to promote his own personal and political interests rather than the national good, our national security interests. I think this emboldened not just Putin, but bad actors around the world.
And just finally, you mentioned briefly
and we're seeing the results.
You're seeing the results right now. I mean, is the result of the ground that Trump set, or is it more the result of other administrations not providing Ukraine the support that they may have needed to defend themselves?
Well, in retrospect, I wish we had provided more defensive weapons all along the way. And I think that right now the Biden administration is providing a lot of defensive weapons. And I think we need to think about, as I said before, how we can do more, how we can be more creative to not only support Ukraine, but save Ukraine.
Ambassador Maria Ivanovich, I appreciate you being with us this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.